Welcome to the Redjacks podcast, everyone. This is IBA all day, and I am joined here with ZK, ZkSaint, that is.
I'm cool with people calling me ZK. It works for me. It's short, sweet. It doesn't sound like I'm trying to rip off some dude from the game.
And today we're continuing with this podcast. This is number 2. And basically, we're going to start off with some general discussions, and then we're going to dive into some specifics. And while we're doing the specific topics, we'll also be doing some gameplay along with the topic that we are discussing, just to kind of have it be along the same lines of what we're talking about.
Trying to mix up, find a formula.
And for those in chat and for those that also watch the video later once it's uploaded, feel free to join in on the discussion and weigh in on your thoughts of the topics that we discuss, or if there's anything that you think that we could also bring up in another discussion, feel free to let us know and we'll look into it.
Definitely. I know I personally go through and I read a lot of the comments, or the couple of comments that were on the last one. Good stuff, man. Oh, you're doing that, don't you?
So I'm going to pass it off to ZK here, and we'll get started.
Yeah. Really cool article came out in the Forbes. I know everybody knows who ZkSaint is. Apparently he did a video that had a lot of really good information in it. Talking about, I guess he went to Bungie, or he's got an insider or something like that. I know he was under an NDA where you can talk about it before, but it kind of touched on the reason the DCV, the Destiny Content Vault, is actually happening. And I know a lot of people think that, the game's too big, they've got to take stuff out, or, they just want to, focus content on certain areas instead of having, all this, huge, vast, basically, overload. Turns out that's actually not what it's for. The DCV, according to ZkSaint and Paul Taffy, was to take pieces of the game that exist as it is right now and to take it out of the game. That way they can recode it for a lot of pretty interesting and exciting stuff. One of the things that was talked about was having destinations that can support more than 50 people. Reworking them so the graphics is better, so that the enemies do different things, so that there's more hidden stuff, so that they're bigger. Just basically prepping all these areas for next gen. One concept that was talked about was the possibility of real time, kind of how they've been doing lately with community quests and stuff like that, but actual real time areas. So say people are playing together and they go through and they find some hidden cave with this crazy hive scripture on it, and all of a sudden hundreds and hundreds of enemies attack, and there's no way that 2 people or 3 people could do this. Well, the community would discover this as is, and they would work together in huge groups, 50 plus players, and would work to open whatever the door is or whatever this entrance is, and then gradually progress. So this could be used kind of like in World of Warcraft, where people find entrances to raids, and they have to do these long, pretty not tedious, not heavy quests, but these heavily focused on the community itself to open up these raids. And to me, I don't know about anybody else, but to me that's really, really exciting stuff. They're trying to push the game more towards an MMO RPG aspect instead of more of a looter shooter, which, in my opinion, Destiny, it feels like they're finally finding their, vision for the game and where they want to go. But, it's a good thing. Yeah, we're losing content, but when that content comes back, it's going to be better than ever before. And the ultimate goal is to take everything that exists within Destiny 2 now and prep it for the same kind of thing. And they're not even considering a Destiny 3 until probably 2024, 2025. So Destiny 2 is going to be here for the long run. And they've got pretty crazy stuff planned for it. But that's all that was really talked about in the article. don't know how you feel about it, IBA, but I think big changes like that, like pushing this game more towards something like World of Warcraft or uh, Final Fantasy Online, something like that. Elder Scrolls Online, anything like that. I think is a really, really, really good direction to go, especially now that Destiny has basically the cornerstone on the looter shooter genre. Right? Like everybody wants to be Destiny, and now they're going to take that MMO facet and apply it to it to give us something that there's really no other game out there like it now. And once this happens, I don't think there will be another game that can even compete.
So my thoughts, and I had shared with it previously. I do really feel that it'll be a good idea. The fear, obviously, being that once a lot of the loot has been picked up by most of the players, especially early on, is the fear that you start losing the player bases to be able to do that. And obviously, if there's
Yeah.
a countermeasure to like allow still for stuff like that to still happen, then it'll be fantastic. It'll be the biggest thing ever, and it could be something that really actually brings the community together as a whole.
Yep.
And again, the biggest thing is finding a way that when they do obviously introduce it, it's going to be something that's brand new, so they don't really have an idea of quite how it's going to fully work out for D2. But the idea that I feel is if you give the ability to have that replayability and have unique rewards from doing it, then I think that you'll be able to get your player base excited to continue to go back to it, um, and find ways to make incentives even for people who've done it a million times over, but they want to help out the community in general because they'll get they'll get stuff for themselves as well while helping out players who actually haven't had the chance to participate,
Yeah.
um, because either schedules are busy or whatever. But you know, just the general concept of having such a big player amount could be huge, and that would be amazing because I feel again, like I said, it could bring the community together. But again, the biggest the biggest question is how long will that last before the community is like, all right, enough is enough. We're kind of tired with this, and then all of a sudden you've got players going, and now all of a sudden it's an issue with getting those type of numbers to be able to succeed in activities like that.
Yeah. I think the one concern that I would have is we've seen stuff like Adobe Labs, Cold Wars of Time, where Bungie tried something really, really unique and tried to make it like a community thing, and they either had a good idea and poorly executed it, or it was just too grand, right? And they underestimated the community, like Cold Wars of Time, for example. Like I will, to the day I die, man, I stand by the fact that I think Cold Wars of Time was meant to have a different reward behind it, and Bungie didn't think that the community would solve it as fast as they did, so they just took what they had on deck, which was Bastion, and threw it in as a reward. Yeah, it's total conspiracy theory, but I'm convinced, man. Right? Like, you had people like Glad and Datto and everybody thinking that, oh my god, this is going to be a sword, this is going to be like something. And it was just an exotic that was we got early access to an exotic that came out 2 weeks later. You know, Bungie has
Mm-hmm.
great ideas, but they're notoriously bad at executing those ideas or anticipating how the community is going to interact with it. Niobe Labs, in my opinion, disaster. Right? Like it was cool, but it was an utter disaster. Bungie was not ready for something like that. They got better with, again, quarters of time. They got better with the Almighty thing. Almighty was kind of lackluster, but for the most part, it was it was enjoyable. Um, but I don't know. I think they're thinking grand scheme, what I think they need to do is, they bring back this content that can host up to 50 people. I think the events need to be limited to maybe like, say at first 15, and then gradually increase and go from there until they get the hang of it. Because again, another concern that I would have too is that, you know, players wouldn't engage the way that they think players would engage, and content is locked out. you know, Nobody's going to want to like go and fight super hard enemies on day one just to unlock like a raid layer, when they're too underpowered to do it. And then people are going to be discouraged, and then that content, like Niobe Labs, is not going to be unlocked. I think they need to be. It's awesome that they're doing it, and I'm really excited for it. And this is a positive step. They just need to be really careful with how they do it. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete flop, and you're trying to bring players back into the game with all these new concepts, And if you're too ambitious, I feel like it's going to do the exact opposite. And I don't think this game needs that, especially going into a new generation of consoles. Player base needs to be thriving. It doesn't need to be discouraged. There still has to be good barriers to entry for new players, as well as enticing old players to come back and players who are already playing to continue playing.
Exactly. Yeah, because Niobe Labs was a fantastic idea when they introduced
Yeah.
it. It was by far the most challenging thing that they've brought out in a while, as like for a 3-man activity. Um, and unfortunately, it did end up flopping. They ended up having to basically be like, all right, well, the Bergusia Forge, which was supposed to get unlocked once Niobe was done, is now being unlocked entirely
Yep.
because we didn't realize that it was going to be that difficult to execute. And a lot of the clues weren't entirely obvious,
No.
unfortunately.
They were very.
And had Niobe been approached a little bit differently, like where you didn't have to restart completely from the first wave, then I think it would have been more bearable instead of going from level 1, getting to level 5 finally, and then, all right, well, now this is new territory, we're screwed, so now we gotta go back through all this again. On top of having to try and make sure we've got enough ammo to actually do this, and then end up wiping because it was either too late or it just didn't have enough ammo to execute it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was the part that frustrated even the best players, was having to restart back to wave 1,
Yeah.
get back all the way up to wave 6, and so on, finally to the point where it was getting really frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, they do that in a lot of stuff too, though. Like you think about Master Nightfalls, or Grandmaster Nightfalls. There's absolutely no checkpoints, right? So you can go through and you can do it. That's the most frustrating thing for me. Is if I go in there and I have a team that's kind of like and then we're doing great, we're doing great, we're doing great. We get to a certain point, and bam, we all wipe, and you get set back all the way. I think Bungie's really weird about their checkpoint systems, which I know it increases like the difficulty of it, but it's really like disheartening whenever you are making so much progress and then bam, you get knocked back to the very beginning. I think if there were checkpoints in Niobe, you know what I mean, that it probably would have been a little bit easier and a little bit more tolerable. Obviously, like the mechanics still would have made it very challenging, but having a checkpoint system that was more consistent would have probably said like, all right, guys, if you make it to wave 3, checkpoint. If you make it to wave 5, bam, you get the checkpoint. But failing and then going all the way back to wave 1, like, fuck, dude, I don't want to do that, right? Like, I want to keep going. I want to know that I'm making progress, and that if we mess up on the very last one, we're gonna have to reset the whole thing. I don't know. It's pretty. I guess it's more like nitpicking than anything else, but they
Well,
can make her.
yeah.
I can make her do events that have to be done to unlock con. It, there's got to be a check with that many people. You know what I mean? Like obviously there are going to be people that go in there just to be a body in the room to get carried and get the whole thing done. So checkpoint systems are going to be pretty key to that stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, and I think something that Bungie's been fairly infamous about is the artificial difficulty.
Yeah.
Um, it's always been a battle of light levels and slash power levels, but a lot of it is not. It's not really felt, you know. Um, and even though they did crank up the AI, when you started doing heroic stuff and the higher tiers of Nightfalls, but there's a lot of enemies that there's no cooldown on anything that they do, and they're so spot on that and I get the accuracy should be higher as the difficulty increases, but the the punishing part is some of the just the cooldown of some of the enemies with their fire,
Yeah.
like hobgoblins and um, and vandals with their
The
snipers.
bubbles.
Oh, and the bubble. Well, the bubbles aren't really too big of a deal because you can just go in there and quickly kill them. But just any of the vandals that have sniper, basically any of the actual sniper enemies,
Yeah.
once they're especially majors and higher, they are so hard to deal with because they're basically on rapid fire the whole time, and
Yeah.
you get a few of them in the same area, and there's just not really any good way of handling it. And it really does punish the player big time, and there's unfortunately no way to really work around it.
Yeah.
Um, again, I understand increasing accuracy because that should be how the AI works. Is the harder the difficulty, the more accurate they're actually going to be. But when you also add on top of the rapid fire, like no cooldown, it makes it it makes it ridiculous.
True. And then you got, you were talking about artificial difficulty. You've got bosses with immunity phases, right? You've got bosses that, you know, I cannot think of a single boss, dude, that does not have a pushback attack. Like,
Every
I'm pretty
big
sure
every big
they all have it, right?
enemy, yeah, every big enemy um, on basically any enemy that's yellow bar, especially bosses, they all have a knockback effect, including floating enemies. Like the Hydras, the Servitors, they
Yep.
all have it, and there's not really any need for it. And I get it, so it's not so you can basically just, especially right now with the state of swords, go in there and just constantly keep going at it and have um, no penalty for being that close. Like I can understand there being like a revenge value built in to where okay,
Hmm.
I've been swiping at him for a little bit. All right, he can knock me back. But when you just barely get in there and they're like, oh well, we're gonna do this now, and then two
Yeah.
seconds later another one follows up, it's like,
Yeah,
at
it defeats the point of baiting them, right? For that stop. Like, you go in there, like, I know a lot of times, like, I'll jump in with my hunter, right? And then as soon as, like, I'm up in the air, I see him starting to go, I'll just take my sword out and I swipe back and then swipe again forward and then go in there and the way I can dodge it. But 2 seconds later, he does another slam attack. Oh,
mm-hmm.
it's crazy. I think things like maybe, I don't know, corrosive auras, like if you're too close to the boss, you start taking damage. Or giving you bosses that can only be damaged a certain way. I.e., long range stuff, or um, melee or ability or something like that. Like, like, change the bosses up because everything now is just it's a big guy at the end of an activity with a shit ton of health and immunity phase, and that's it. Like, bosses need to be more. diverse, especially like if you're going into these 50-man activities or like these grand, you know, whatever they're planning. There's got to be more diversity when it comes to final encounters, bosses, mechanics. We can't do the whole like moats. You know what I mean? Like I'm at this point, I'm kind of over moats, man. There's so many things that involve moats. There's so many things that involve standing on plates. It's just, I don't know. They've got to think outside the box more often.
Yes.
But I
Oh,
mean, everything so far, like it's been good. It's not that the content isn't enjoyable. It's just it gets kind of redundant. And for a lot of people, me and you are diehard players, right? We're not going to be turned off by like, oh, hey, it's another boss with the pushback attack in the case. We don't care. We'll play it either way. We'll grind it. We don't give a shit. But other players could be like, oh my god, another boss like this, you know?
mm-hmm. Okay. So the next thing, which, as you guys can see, we're going to be diving into Gambit and kind of discussing some of the new things that they finally came out with for some of the information about how Gambit's going to be changing going forward. So first and foremost, Gambit and Gambit Prime are going to coexist. We knew that before the last swap, but we didn't know how this was going to work. And thankfully, Bungie finally gave us some insight as to how this is going to actually work. And so, one of the things that I think was actually a pretty interesting approach, which kind of makes it a good thing that they kind of took this approach, and I'm curious to see how it works out. Is they're keeping the one round format, which great, make it a winner take all because normal Gambit can take a long amount of time, especially if you go into overtime. Um, and even then, for the most part, like I don't remember how long like the basic round is, but let's say both of the first two rounds go the distance in time. That's a lot of time already off the board. That's basically probably the equivalent of playing maybe 3 Crucible matches, and that's just if it's a 2-0 win,
Yeah.
for Gambit. But if we go into overtime, we're looking at even extended. We're looking at even more time just for one game of Gambit. And don't get me wrong, like I love Gambit to pieces. I have enjoyed it since it came out, but Gambit hasn't really been touched a whole lot since it's come out. And unfortunately, a lot of it has been the same gameplay. Um, and as we have more weapons coming out, a lot of metas have been formed now for Gambit to where a lot of the mechanics have gone out the window as well. Um, the other thing is since Gambit and Gambit Prime are becoming one and the same, they're also doing away with the Gambit Prime armor perks. Now, again, this is honestly a huge thing because we go back to the whole RNG aspect of running Reckoning over and over and over and over again. There was no guarantee that you were going to get a full set that quickly to go into Gambit Prime with a full set of, you know, in a full set of Invader or full set of Collector or the other two, and um, that threw the balance of the game way off because again, you're looking at a whole RNG aspect of, well, now you've got teams who were really lucky to get the arms and everything else because the helmet was guaranteed if you did the particular bounty, but everything else you had to grind for in Reckoning. Now, um, it's not easy to sit in there the whole time because you gotta wager those particular motes that you're wanting for that particular set you want, and it took a long time alone just to acquire one set, and even then, it wouldn't be a set that you necessarily like. And then you also have to factor in the stat rolls on them as well. And if the stat rolls weren't what you were looking for, well, then you're back in there again, grinding for more stuff until you got that roll that you were hoping for. So I'm kind of excited that the Gambit Prime armor perks aren't really a thing anymore going forward with the next season. Um, because some of the armor perks too didn't really make it worthwhile to really run. And you didn't really see a lot of teams actually utilizing these armor perks anyway, unless you were an invader.
Yep.
And the invader set favored pretty heavily for the invader, obviously because it's called invader set, but it favored them immensely when they would come in and invade. The bank would be locked down automatically the moment they invade. I believe their timer was extended. They had didn't they have like extra defense as well while they were
Yeah,
invading?
I think they did like a little bit more damage and took a little bit more damage.
Um, so there was a lot of aspects to that it just didn't make it any fun. And I kind of also want to get your thoughts here in just a moment um, about these changes that are coming for Gambit. Um, the other part, the other two things that really caught my eye, of course, because they're huge changes to the game mode, is the moats phase. Um, is in
Being
being
2/3 of the match.
is being involved in 2/3 of the match rather than just half the match, where it's like, all right, well now we got enough moats in a hurry, and now it's primeval time. Let's go. Um, the other part was the primeval fights were being sped up. That alone was a huge deal because a lot of times it just, without all these stacking of these buffs, you had to kill your primeval envoys just to get a stack, and then you had to wait for more stacks as you're slowly doing damage to the enemy. Unless, of course, you had like Oppressive Darkness or swords and all these other things that really stacked your damage early on. It was a very slow process. So
Yeah.
they're kind of removing some of those mechanics, but they're allowing to where more envoys are spawned in, which I think was a huge addition there. Is
Yeah.
more envoys will spawn in as you deal damage to your primeval.
40%, I think is what it said. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. This every 40% damage done to the primeval will respawn. The other thing too was invader timers, like for the cooldown, has been increased. That again
Thank
also
God.
is a huge deal because if you got a team that's constant, like they immediately get their 25, and they go in and they steamroll, take all your moats, and the team is already back up to 50, or they say they hold on to their moats, or say they hold on to their invasions, and they get 2 invasions back to back ready to go. Well, normally, basically, as soon as you come out of the portal, it's a couple seconds, and then your portal's ready to go again for you to invade. That timer is being increased, I think, by like 10 or 15 seconds, if I remember correctly. And so that makes a big deal to actually strategizing your invasions a little bit more because it doesn't allow you to just go on in, wreck the team, and then come back out. Your team's already deposited more, and you can go back in and annihilate the team already before they've even had a chance to do anything. It gives it more of a fair playing field, I feel, um, and makes it to where you can't just rampage on your invasions whenever you want. Um, And then the last thing, or the last two things, was the score obviously is being increased, so that way the game mode is kind of balanced out, so it's not just a quick 100 and call it a day. The invasions are still remaining the same. They're not adding extra invasions or anything like that. And the other note on the invasion, or on not on invasion, but on with moats is the 10 moat captain is going to go away in favor for phalanx because they realized finally that the 10 moat phalanx, or not the 10 moat phalanx, the 10 moat captain was ridiculously strong. And again, it only required 10 moats versus summoning a large Taken Knight, which most teams basically destroyed that within seconds. So they're going to bring in a phalanx in favor of the captain for 10 moats, which I think is a fair trade. Because since we're doing with the sets, you no longer have giant blockers, which was your phalanx. 9 times out of 10 anyway, it was a phalanx.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, for the most part, and I think there's a couple things I'll add here after, but with all that, what are your thoughts as far as how they're approaching these changes to Gambit?
I think it's a good start. Um, I the timing is good. The extending like the moat phase really good. The blockers great. Getting rid of the armor perks amazing. But the core of the problem I feel still lies within the use of mods within the game mode. You know what I mean? Like armament mods are still going to be a problem. Uh, the amount of heavy ammo that's available every match is going to be a problem. Um, Stacking certain things, you know, like just boss damage wise, you know, just if you have tractor cannon, you know, and then 3 swords or melting point or anything like that, you know, you're just automatically at an advantage, and it doesn't matter what they do to the game mode as it, you know, to the core of the game mode itself. It's the way that the player interacts with the game mode is what I feel needs to change. This is a good start, without a doubt. But I think they need to start looking more like how the player interacts within Gambit to fix Gambit. You know, yeah, nobody likes getting invaded back to back to back, but nobody also likes getting invaded, you know, by a dude who's got, you know, max. What I'm looking for here, truth rockets. You know what I mean? Nobody likes being invaded by a guy who's got Thunderlord and sits in the back of the map, or you know the ability that some invaders have to body shot you with a sniper and get a kill. It's certain things like that. Like the core game mechanics itself, they've made amazing improvements on with this stuff. Like I'm literally loving everything I see. I'm kind of worried about the Primeval thing. With the envoys spawning, you know, every 40%, you know, I could see a lot of people maybe incentivizing like, oh hey, you know, let's kill the envoys. Let's let, you know, this guy get a kill and kill him up to say like 50%, and then let's you know, basically farm envoys to get like quick, easy damage, and then just melt. You know what I mean? I feel like there's going to be some kind of an exploit there. It's not going to incentivize a player to just get in there, kill the boss as fast as possible. I feel like, you know, there's going to be a way. There's going to be a cheese method, regardless of how it is. But I think, you know, the ability to artificially manipulate how envoys spawn is probably going to be a problem, like, without a doubt. But yeah, everything else, man, I think it's perfect, actually. You know, I never liked the never liked armor perks. You know that. I've never liked invader perks, especially. I think invaders are way too overpowered in Gambit. But you know, I like Gambit Prime because it's short. and I like regular Gambit because it's easy. Not easy, but it's more relaxed. You know what I mean? But yeah, Gambit. I'm actually kind of excited to start playing Gambit again.
Um, yeah, so they actually, and I was actually really happy to see this. The fact that they play tested with the moat drainage,
Yeah.
because initially they were going to increase the moat drainage to punish teams for not depositing and all that stuff, but they quickly realized that that would also be a bad idea because of the fact that if you got a well-organized 4-stack, that
Yep.
moat drainage is gonna severely punish like a random team.
Oh yeah.
So
We've
they're
done it before.
yeah, so they're gonna keep the moat drainage, the same. They're not gonna really make any type of big changes to that, thankfully, because otherwise, yeah, there just would not be any coming back from that. Um, I think the other thing too, that I remember, I think I saw, excuse me, um, was they were working on making it to where, for the most part, that there's not as big of that there's not really as much of catch-up mechanics. That it's going to be more of if the team is actually playing good and they're ahead, then they're going to be able to keep being ahead and not have a team all of a sudden come back from the depths of nowhere because of some weird catch-up mechanic.
Right.
Because you and I have seen it far too many times. We have a decent lead, and all of a sudden, the other team's got their primeval up, and it's over.
Yep.
Which, again, a lot of that falls on the team that's way ahead. Like, it's their job to keep the throttle going and take it to the house. But at the same time, it's like you can't punish a team for actually playing good.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I think that happened far too many times where a team would actually be playing good and get hurt by some catch-up mechanic.
Yeah. It's the same way. Like, yeah, you can't punish a team for playing good, but you can't reward a team for playing bad either. You know what I mean? Like, you go in there on your own merits and you do well or you do bad based on your ability and your cooperation as a team. And I don't know, really honestly, like, my only concern is I still think invaders are a little bit too overpowered, man. I think that they need to be dialed back a bit. I'm all about the overshield. I'm all about the wall hacks. I'm all about the increased damage. It's 4-on-1. Like, obviously you need that, but having all of that together, no. Especially not whenever you have armament mods too. That they can just go in, kill a couple of enemies, get full heavy, and then invade.
Mm-hmm.
It'll always be a frustrating game mode until that's fixed. But yeah, man, I'm kind of excited for Gambit. I haven't said it in a long time. I think I burned myself out playing Season of the Drifter solo for the entire season of nothing but Gambit. So hopefully this will bring me back. Maybe it'll encourage other people too. And right now I feel ever since I've been farming for Bright Dust, I've been playing a lot more Gambit. And when I see the same players all the time. There's really not that player diversity here. The population is really, really small compared to what it used to be, and I just want to see more people in there, man. Yeah, I played the same team 4 times in a row the other day, and then I left, and then 2 games after that, I played them again. That's not okay.
Well, and that's the other thing is where Gambit Prime is so much shorter and quicker, so you can get rewards and try and grind for the stuff that you're looking for. Then that's also the other reason as to why if you play normal Gambit, there's not as big of a pool as there should be.
Yeah. Definitely, consolidating the 2 game modes will definitely help with player population. I think that's really, really important. Yeah, more variety. Definitely. I don't even know why I said it. The medium blocker. So glad it's changing, man. I will deliberately gather 14 and deposit right? Or, if I have 10 or 11 or 12, I'll just deposit right then because it's just so much more effective to drop a taken knight. Yeah, that's all I was saying. Yeah, just the medium blocker is so much more effective than the large or anything else. Even the 20 count blocker, the extra large blocker, he's kind of a pushover, man. To be honest, like he's not strong.
Well, and
there's no point.
Well, yeah, and again, coordinated team can quickly wipe that giant blocker off the field like no tomorrow.
Yeah. Another thing that I really think the game mode needs is every boss needs to have some sort of mechanic to it. It can't just be like this guy right here, where you just go in and you just, bullet sponge, slay, done. No, each boss, but kind of like the big primeval, right? He has phases where he's not necessarily immune, but he's got a slight mechanic to him. In Gambit Prime, every boss has the same mechanic, but it's a mechanic nonetheless. I want to see mechanics in boss fights. If it's a phalanx, I want you to have to be able to do damage to his shield to disable it and to make him drop it. That way you can actually damage him. Or if it's knight, you got to shoot him in the knee to cripple him, kind of like how you used to do Crota, and then you can do damage to him.
Exactly.
Stuff like that, dude. Like just little things like that would make such a huge difference. It would make it fun and exciting. These changes are a positive step forward, but there's more that needs to be done. Did I hit him with that? Interesting. That's where I just saw. Kind of like how I asked you last time. Besides the changes listed here, like what changes would you, if you were the Bungie dev with like the keys to Gambit, what would you do? What could be done?
I still feel, the changes to heavy ammo economy and just the gunfights in general through that.
Yeah.
Need to be changed because 90% of the gunfights are basically heavy ammo or heavy weapons, and who has the heavy ammo.
Yep.
And again, like you were saying, with all the armament mods and everything else, you're able to stack up on heavy ammo in a hurry. Which again goes back to the whole RNG thing.
Yeah.
The ammo like that where it's very easy to turn the tide, that should not be an RNG factor.
Yeah.
For the main reason that, once again, it's extremely easy for someone with heavy ammo to kill somebody that doesn't have heavy ammo. Definitely. Even if you get the drop on somebody, if they've got heavy ammo, and even if you still get the drop on them, because of the overshield, you're not going to win that fight.
Of course. The other week, actually it was like 3 or 4 days ago, I was playing, and, guy invades, completely clueless, right? I get him down, get his first shield down, second shield down, to get him about half health. He just instantly turns around with Thunderlord and just wipes our entire team. We didn't stand a chance, right? It's just, I don't know, man. It's stacked too far in the favor of the invader right now. You could even go as far as to say, like, okay, you don't want to mess with the armor mods, you don't want to mess with all the scavenger mods or anything like that. Okay, change the way that the weapons act within the game mode. We've seen, like, for example, like Traveler's Chosen is a great example. In PvE, 1 kill gives you 1 stack. In PvP, 1 kill gives you 3 stacks. That makes sense, right? Like, it's harder to kill a Guardian than a regular ad. Therefore, you get rewarded from killing a Guardian more than you would killing a regular ad. In Gambit, I think capacity needs to be adjusted. I think how much you get per brick needs to be adjusted. Yeah, if you're not going to change the mods themselves because that would like cause too much problems between PvE and PvP, fine. Change the way that the guns act within the game mode. Force people to. It would sound kind of like douchey to say act in good faith, but you know you it's a looter shooter, right? Shooter is the main important thing. Like it's not point pull dead. Like, there's a certain amount of gun skill that's expected within the game. If you play a lot, you get better and you get better, and it feels more rewarding whenever you go up and you actually have a duel with somebody and you win. Right? Like it's a good feeling. Or if you lose, it's a teaching moment that shows like, okay, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? There's no risk and reward whenever you have tons of heavy ammo as well as a damage buff and a huge overshield. When you just go in there and slay everything. I don't know, and it is a lot that can be done, but I think that's the core of the thing that needs to be done the most is focus on the mechanics more than the game mode itself.
So the last thing with the whole combination of the Gambit and Gambit Prime is the decreasing of the tier of enemies, which is a huge deal because when you go from Gambit to Gambit Prime, there's a huge noticeable difference in the tiers of the enemies, which slows down the game a lot, but it still speeds up the game because you're getting more motes out of it. So they're lowering the tiers, especially since there's not the Reaper set, obviously, going forward, so you can't weaken the big yellow bar enemies that constantly spawn in, but they're lowering them to orange bars, so you'll see more orange bar enemies, but there'll be more of a balance, which I think was kind of needed, because Gambit Prime just felt too much of a slugfest with a lot of the enemies, which was another reason why it kind of turned me off with Gambit Prime, was just, there was too many orange bar / yellow bar enemies, and it wasn't necessary. Like, I understand it's supposed to be tougher because it's the cream of the crop game mode, but you can't go in that direction with it because then that's just too much. Especially when you solo queue a lot, which is something that we'll get into here after this match. And I feel that it's going to be a happy medium with the game modes. Again, we'll obviously have to see here come November, which is coming up pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
But again, I'm really excited to see the revamped Gambit because I'm hoping it'll honestly get me playing Gambit more because I haven't been playing nearly as much Gambit as I used to, but I still enjoy the game mode.
Yeah, I've got a lot of really good, like Destiny memories playing Gambit. That I've had games where I've dropped like 135 motes and never lost any, and then had people message me and say, "Hey man, thanks for that that triumph. I really appreciate it." I've had games where it was a super close call and then we like barely squeezed out a win, or we got like run over by a team using some crazy burn method, and then we go and we inspect and I'm like, holy crap, let's try that, and the very next game, you're just stunned, like utterly shocked at how good it was. It's good. It's got good bones. I just think there are a lot of improvements that can be made to it, and I would really like to see more people play the game mode and make it more enjoyable.
1000% I agree there.
I think anything within this game, you know what I mean? Like, if a certain aspect of it is lacking or it's not a healthy, contribution to the game as a whole, I want to see it improve. Because I love the game. You know what I mean? Like, you ask me, as much as like of a Borderlands nut that I am, I'll always love Destiny. And so if there's something in there that, was fun at one time and is no longer fun because of A, B, or C. I want to see A, B, or C be changed and people engage with it and enjoy it the same way I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like right
Yeah,
now,
it is definitely that A, B.
yeah, so like right now, we're about to see a good example of the back-to-back invasions. I just got back from invading, and I'm going back through already. That's something that is going to change. There's going to be a 10-second increase to that, which is definitely needed.
Yeah.
You know,
So wait, did it specify whether or not, like right now, it's every what 25 you get an invasion?
I think they're keeping it. I don't know because they're keeping it where it's still 3 invasions, like
Okay.
Gambit Prime. So I don't remember how. I think it's every 50. I think that's what I think that's what it might be getting changed to.
Okay, that makes sense. And then after the primeval's up, it's every 20 seconds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that a lot.
especially the primeval like invasion period, it's gonna be 20 seconds, which again, that's gonna put a lot of stress on making your invasions count.
Yep.
So especially like once you get your primeval up, it's not because like in normal Gambit, especially you notice a lot of back to back to back to back invasions in a hurry.
Yeah.
And
But
thankfully,
there's also a caveat to that, though. That's also going to give invaders more time to farm heavy. That's just going to put more of an emphasis on, hey, the heavy ammo situation needs to be looked at and revised.
well, in like this case where the game is so lopsided, there's no point to invading back to back to back because all it's doing is hurting your team. Because even though yes,
Yeah.
they're trying to bring back the primeval damage on us, it's not enough to make a difference. Which is why the timer being where it's at for oh you know being increased from every 10 seconds to 20 seconds is going to be crucial for making that decision to all right, I'm going to invade versus I should probably hold off for a moment because especially when primeval damage or when a primeval is barely summoned, that's when the rapid invasions happen,
Yeah.
and there's no point to it.
It's really not. And I mean, you can look at it from like your team too. Like, say, we're four stacked, right? And it's a close game. And if you've got like an invader who's constantly going in there and invading, instead of helping you do DPS, that's a detriment to your team. Putting the blocker on it. Hold on one second.
Opposing team do better. And your team's solid. Transmat pride. Get ready for some resistance. Hostiles called backup. Hostiles incoming at the burrow.
You still there, Abby?
Yep,
All right. Yeah, my bad. I'm gonna tell you. Man, I got sidetracked.
that's all right.
Doesn't look good with like 18 months lost, but
Yeah, it's all right. Our situation's not looking too great, but all
oh, I'm
good.
not distracted anymore. We're good to go. We're good on the next round. Go to the overtime. Easy day.
Yeah, especially since one of their guys won't have truth ammo.
Oh yeah. No, that's all the truth hit me in the face. I didn't even realize that we got invaded whenever that happened. So I'm not even gonna use my super.
Yeah, there's not going to be really a whole lot I can do. I'm just going to keep trying, but there's not really a whole lot I can do because they got one guy that's literally just sitting back with truth.
I see him. You dumb. He popped super on, but he only got one of us. He has no idea where to go. He's trying to like spawn trap me.
It's okay. I've got them held up a little bit. They got swords, so they're going to win it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's fine. Overtime's fine.
Apparently, I killed one of them with a grenade well after I was long gone, so that's interesting.
Nice. Where's my impressive buttons? There we go. That's another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up too. These oppressive darkness mods, or these damage increase mods, with the changes that they made to damage stacking, right? Like, do you think they're necessary, or do you think they make other abilities such as shoulder charge, track the cannon, anything like that just completely irrelevant?
It makes it completely irrelevant because
Yeah,
all you have to do is run anything that gives you your grenade back quickly, or throw down a well on top of that, and there you go. You know,
yeah. That's I find myself all the time, like like why would I even use this whenever I have oppressive darkness? Why would I use this when I have solar plexus? Just all these like extra damage things, like they're awesome. I'm glad they're in the game, and I think Bungie did a very, very good job with them. Especially like including them every season and rotating them out with different things. But if you're going to limit the amount of damage buffs we can have to prevent us from melting bosses, then what's really the point of it? Like it's like self defeating almost,
yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I would feel better if if it's going to be a permanent thing where every season we get like a new thing similar to Oppressive Darkness or whatever. Rework the skills so they do different things. You know what I mean? Like maybe instead of shoulder charge causing you to do extra damage, right? It causes the boss to do less damage, right? Or enemies become more vulnerable to ability damage or something like something that doesn't involve like oh, I threw an oppressive grenade whenever somebody tried to melting point the boss and that wasted his ability. Good job, asshole, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think again we have so many things now that allow us to damage stack, which
Yeah,
wasn't supposed to be the which wasn't supposed to be how it was the way that it was, but we found a workaround between oppressive and throwing down bubble and well and those three things all like working hand in hand with one another. And then we also throw in the charged light stuff as well.
yep,
We have all these new avenues of weapon stacking, which, don't get me wrong, there are consequences to doing those things because you can't get kills while you're charged with light because then you start losing those stats. But you also have to
exactly.
work towards getting those the charged light so that you have that increased weapon damage. Granted, we have a mod now that allows us to just pop a super and bam, everybody in your team's got it. Um, but the whole thing with the Press of Darkness is, yes, you can use that for a boss, but then you don't have a need for ads if you need it to
Yep.
quickly kill all those ads in the vicinity. Because I honestly find it very useful to use against ads instead of holding on to it, because all the ads that are being damaged by that are weakened.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely.
And, especially if you got like an AoE type grenade that sits there for a little bit, they're constantly burning off burning off numbers and all dying.
Yeah, it's we have amazing tools now, and like the ability to be able to make actual builds now. Like me, dude. Like I'm a build guy, right? Like the Division, Borderlands. I'm a build guy. I love it. And now that we can finally do that in Destiny, it's amazing. But I feel like we have too many tools at our disposal, and it's really hard to, like I want to use, Seraph orbs. Oh, I gotta have a set of armor to do that. Say I want to use Charge with Light, I gotta have a set of armor to do that. And then Nightmare Hunt armor to do that. I feel like it's almost too much. You know what I mean? It's really overwhelming. And then obviously going into the next year, we're gonna have God knows what. It's gonna be. Think about you coming in as a new player, right? That's gonna be overwhelming. Like absolutely overwhelming.
Yes.
I think in this case, maybe consolidating, because what you got 4 or 5 mods for each elemental, alignment for each like mechanic. So the Charge with Light has, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 per, like Arc, Solar, Void, and then you've got the Seraph Orbs, 3, 4, 5 mods per one. Like it's so much, dude.
It really is.
I think I've never been a fan of like the elemental attunement for armor. I kind of feel I don't know. I don't like it. I think it's kind of like ridiculous. There's really not that much good stuff when it comes to like solar and arc. You're better off just having void everything minus like 1 or 2 things, right? Or if you have like a very specific build, then obviously you go with like a solar thing. I know like a really popular thing right now is Sunshot with the Rasputin mod that solar splash creates Seraph orbs or whatever. Like that's really popular. But I don't know. You're just throwing content into there that ultimately is not really used that much, and it just muddies everything up. Hmm. I think consolidating, getting rid of the elemental attunements on armor, I think would be a positive move.
I agree in that sense, or in the regards to that, just because we have the 3 different elements, which all serve their different purposes. I think it should be more of a universal thing, um,
Yeah.
because then we have the issue that arises of hoarding armor with all these different armaments, or not armaments, different affiliations. And while it's great because it makes it to where there's more diverse effects, it also hurts. Um, I feel it also hurts the game because then once again, people who aren't able to necessarily grind nearly as much can't afford to sit there and change attunements whenever they want to, or to build up other things. Like, it should be one affiliation, and I get the reasoning behind it, that they wanted to narrow down the amount of mods that there were, because trying to find the mods that you wanted was a headache. But the way that they went about it was was so wrong because now
Yeah.
as we're continuing to add on more seasonal mods and everything else, you know, some of them are universal mods that go are going to go on for the entirety of the game until they decide to get rid of it or do something about it.
That's,
And
yeah.
we're going to be right back to the same issue where you got to go through 3 pages of mods to try and find what you need.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you next. Do you think that them keeping the mods long term was a good idea or a bad idea? I think ultimately it's probably a bad idea. Like people are creating builds centered around these mods, and when this armor eventually gets sunset and you can't use those mods anymore, you're still going to be populating your page. You know what I mean? Like you're still going to have them in your inventory. I don't know how that works with like data storage on their end, but I feel like consolidating either Armor 2.0 is great. Like, don't get me wrong, it was amazing. It is amazing. I still like the old version better. I just wish we could, why couldn't we have had both? Like armor would drop with like, sword reserves, just the basic perks that were on armor, and then give us 2 or 3, attachments like mod attachments on the armor, or we could put seasonal, and then like one of our choice, like a stat mod. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You could have a stat mod, a seasonal mod slot, and then a single one to put stuff like breach refractor, or radiant light, something like simplify it and consolidate. You don't have to sacrifice armor 2.0 or the vanilla armor, like I'm sorry, Forsaken armor perks. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because yeah, if you so like right now, if you want to go back and do older raids, like you know, with the raids that are being sunset right now, if you wanted to go back and do mostly the only thing that's relevant um, to these specific perks is garden, then you've got to keep the garden armor, or at least
yep,
armor around that season, um, that allows you to equip those particular raid mods. Because when you get the newer armor, those mods aren't available. And
exactly.
I understand that they're raid specific and it should be tied to raid specific armor. When you make it a universal thing to be attached to PvP armor or strike armor, or whatever the case may be going forward, you then ruin the uniqueness that the raid armor had.
Yep,
Um, and unfortunately, the raid armor, for the most part, does come with pretty good stats, but a lot of times it's not worthwhile keeping.
yeah,
So it makes it to where you don't want to run that raid armor, but you've got to keep it because it makes the raid easier because you can attach said mods on there to give you damage increase or a little bit extra defense with certain things. So um, that's the biggest issue right there that I see that they could look into addressing at a later point of making the raid mods actually universal.
yeah. I honestly, I think all mods should be universal. There's a lot of fluff mods that are in there that people just don't use. Like, I know they collect stats. Go through, check stats, and see what people use and what people don't. If they don't use it, like say if it falls under 10%, get rid of it. You know what I mean? Keep the important ones that are vital to like these builds that are pretty popular. Get rid of the rest, and then just make all of them universal. Right? Like I'm definitely cool with seasonal armor being retired and having like slots for certain things, but at the same time, like going forward, I think you know elemental attunement needs to go on armor, and mods need to be universal, or you need to have the ability. Like I know they've talked about it before, where you can equip an arc mod on a solar piece of armor. It just costs more, of your armor energy to do it, But then if you equip solar to solar, it's discounted. That's how it is in Warframe, and it works fine. I think that's probably something that, if they're not going to get rid of elemental attunement on armor, then they need to look at doing something like that.
Yeah, I actually, that's actually a pretty spot on thing that I think they could do. Um, so, as everyone saw, we're going into Iron Banner, which kind of brings us to our next big thing. And that's going to be the state of Crucible going into next season.
Ooh.
So, Crucible, for the most part, has been gutted. It's been gutted hard. Um, the featured modes that they're keeping is, they're keeping control. They're going to let elimination stay in there, so it's not kind of. I think elimination's in there when trial's not around. I don't remember if it was rotated or not. Obviously, Rumble is being kept and survival. And the weekly rotator has been gutted severely. The only things that are being kept around is Clash, Mayhem, and Showdown. Which I think kind of defeats the purpose of even having like Clash to me should not be a rotator. I think that should be
No, this should
more of a
definitely be fourth.
perma game mode that's kept around for the longevity. Just because it's a classic game mode. Like if you don't want to sit there and play Control, then Clash is the next game mode that you go to because it's along the same lines, just without having to capture control points. And I think that'll throw a lot of people off because then you'll just start getting people that go into Control. I mean, it's already that way as it is with Control, but you're going to see more and more of it as that game mode goes away into a weekly playlist where you're going to have people not playing the objective. You're going to have people just running solely around, just looking to kill, period. Not doing anything objective-wise to actually help. Because they want to have those high kill games since they can't go in the Clash.
Yeah.
The other thing, they're creating more freelance playlists. I think I'll have to look here in a moment. No, it's just affected to Iron Banner. Okay, that's right. So Iron Banner is now going to have a freelance playlist.
Wait, what?
I personally don't know how to feel about that. I think it's the wrong move by Bungie, personally, to allow Iron Banner to have a freelance playlist, because while I completely understand, I've been a part of teams that get steamrolled by teams that are together, but not every team that is stacked is necessarily good. It makes it easier for them to coordinate what they're doing against random teams, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. And unfortunately, a lot of teams back out, a lot of players back out when they see a stack because they're like, well, here we go again, I'm going to get steamrolled. It's not the case all the time.
No, definitely not.
And I understand that we want to be more inclusive to allowing more players to play the game mode, but we also need to look at of what it's going to do in the long run. When you got a bunch of single players trying to play, that aren't in teams, because as it stands right now, there's not any type of balance with teams when it comes to Crucible. And even in a freelance style playlist, you're still going to see a lot of teams getting steamrolled because teams are not balanced by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And I had thought Iron Banner was included in the skill base, but I think if I remember right, they made it to where it was connection based as well instead of skill based. And my personal experience, since it's gone to connection based outside of survival, which is still skill based for the most part, it has not been fun. I personally have not enjoyed connection-based matchmaking at all because, again, like I said, teams have been really unbalanced um, while playing Crucible. And I don't know if it's just because people don't know how to work together as a team when they're not playing with friends, or if it's just they don't care in general. But I've just noticed from my personal experience that it's not a fun time. Um, I still do good for the most part in PvP, but it's not a fun time constantly losing. And connect and the other part to the connection base is there's been more mercy games on either side when I play versus it being even remotely close,
Yeah.
which again also ruins the fun of the experience because when you're in a token system like this and you get hardly anything for tokens, um, when you get hardly anything for tokens when you lose and you're constantly losing on a
Yeah.
almost every single game, it makes you not want to play PvP anymore.
That's exactly how I feel, man. A lot of the time.
When skill based was the thing, the games were actually enjoyable still, and I understand it's so people who are god tier aren't constantly being matched up against other sweat lords, but to me, it's kind of the price you pay for actually being good. You want to be good, then you should be playing against people 90% of the time that are around your same skill level, and every now and then getting that match that's like, all right, this is my steamroll game, let's have some fun. Not 90% of your games are steamroll games, and we're having fun now because I'm curb stomping all these potatoes who are new to the game, or whatever that case may be, versus okay, I'm playing against someone that's actually around my skill level, or a little bit better, because it 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 puts you into. I know a lot of people say that they get better from playing against people that are well above their skill level, but there's a certain truth to that. I feel if you're playing against, say, um, who would be a good example? Let's say no, let's say Shroud, because we know that man is insane.
Yeah.
Let's say Shroud was playing Destiny, and you're having to go up against him on almost a daily occurrence. You're not going to get any better by going up against somebody like that, because he is on a whole nother level compared to us. A whole nother level. And there's no amount of playing against people close, like around that skill level, that's going to allow you to get even remotely good. And it's going to tear you down. Because you're not going to see the improvements because you're constantly getting curb stomped.
Yep.
I feel going against people of similar skill level, has its pros and cons of whether or not you actually get better or not. But the way that they went about this connection base, I feel they went about it the wrong way. And even with the freelance playlist, it's not going to solve anything for Iron Banner. And with that, because I had cut you off on accident, and I do apologize. What's your thoughts about like what I said, or anything that you'd like to add on to that?
The only real thing, man, like, what was the point of Crucible Labs if every fun game mode that you made is now just gonna go away, right? Like, I'm not a Crucible player. I enjoy it sometimes, but that's because, like, I don't know. To me, just the game modes are boring, man. Like, it's either Clash, Control, or Mayhem. Right? It's really the only three that have stuck around for as long as they have. And you have the Crucible community. You can see them all the time on, like, Reddit and everywhere else. Like, they're bored, man. Nothing has happened, or they haven't been given anything in a long time. Everything's been stale for the past 3 years. When's the last time they did like a major adjustment to Crucible? When they added sixes? or when they added special ammo. How long ago was that? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense in a time where people are demanding more content or demanding something fresh, that you're going to get rid of all the fresh content that you had and then promote the same boring stuff that they've been playing for 7 years. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But again, I'm not a Crucible player, so it could be something that they want. They want the playlist to be consolidated. That way, there's more of a player base. That way, people aren't matching the same people, and it's a sweat match every single time, and blah 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 blah. But and then they'll go with Iron Banner, like you said, like they're creating a freelance playlist. Now you're splitting Iron Banner player base in half, almost. That's not going to be good. I don't see that going well at all. I think that is probably the worst move they could have done. I don't know nothing about algorithms or how they do matchmaking, but I'm pretty sure that there's a way that they could prioritize, besides, on top of that, it just seems like a weird way to go with Crucible. Like, you would expect them to add more, and obviously, like, cut the fat, you know what I mean? But add more or add something new, not take away from an already, starving activity. It's weird to me. But you're the PvP guy. Did you ever play any of the extra game modes?
I played the Scorch Cannon when it was around, but that was mostly just to quickly get bounties done and a couple other things done. Otherwise, I didn't really do a whole lot. Like Showdown, I didn't really care too much for. Lockdown, I felt was a good idea, but because of the way that everybody played it,
yeah,
it wasn't played the way that it was meant to be played at all. It was a really cool concept when it came out, but people started finding loopholes in playing the game mode that allowed for these huge kill games that shouldn't be happening in a normal setting. And then it turned into, alright, well, here's these kill lobbies now for grinding pinnacles, for grinding ritual weapons, and so on. And it didn't become a game mode that was any fun, because the potential in that game mode was lost the moment that they started going around the way that the game mode was meant to be played. I'm honestly surprised Supremacy is leaving the list.
Wait, Supremacy's leaving?
Yeah, Supremacy's not going to be around. Supremacy was not one that was staying.
Really? I'm surprised. Like, I actually really like Supremacy, man. That was really nice.
Yeah, it's another one that's going away. But like right now, Chad, this is a pretty good example of like, we're going up against a stacked team. I don't know how big of a team, but most of these guys are rocking Trials armor, so they're constant sweat lords. But they're all working together. Yeah, they're a 5 stack, it looks like. But they're able to coordinate and be like, all right, you and me stick together, let's do this wombo combo type deal. Like, I've got 2 Titans right now coming at me from 2 different angles, because they're coordinating all that. You're not going to see that in normal gameplay with randos, because they don't know what's going on, and half the time, even if you try and go into the chat lobby with them, you can't do anything. Like right now, I just immediately got double teamed. Like, no hesitation.
They're laning, team shotting, they're solid organized team.
Yeah. And, 90% of the people don't listen or even going to the team chat, because Most of the time, it's people just constantly griping. So there's no way to try and coordinate with randos that refuse to want to, listen. And unfortunately, that's not going to change with freelance. By the way, people, that's
It's really not.
it's not. You're going to have the same people. You're going to have the same things happening now, where you got people who don't want to be in the chat. And I get it. You don't want to listen to people or whatever. You just want to do you. But you also have to think about what's going on with the team.
I literally just spawned in and I got killed instantly.
So
Damn.
but not a whole lot we can do there. That it's a well coordinated team. It's an actual good team, and that like that much right there, which is going to be one of the last points we touch on for Crucible before we move on to like another somewhat generic topic. Is this honestly to me is how PvP should be. Every now and then you get run into, or you get ran over or run into a team like this.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be on a constant basis, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get it on a constant basis, and I feel you. I've had it happen. It's bound to happen. It's very unfortunate when it does happen, but if you're looking towards just getting rewards, stick it out. Try and do what you can. It makes doing quests a pain, but sometimes it's just best to try and tough it out, So, but on that note, moving on to a new thing, depending on if I can get back in there. Because I think they were supposed to do maintenance today, I don't remember.
Reset? Yeah, they're doing something weird with the Nightfall. The double rewards or whatever all week.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the shadows. So, if we're gonna do that, we need to do it this week.
Yeah, so I'm not really going to be able to get to it, but I remember like some of the basics on it. So ritual weapons, well, more like ritual weapons. So ritual weapon will be coming back, but this next season it's just going to be one weapon. However, we're changing. Well, we're not changing. We're not involved, but the way that they're going about how you can obtain the ritual weapon is being completely overhauled. Now, from what I had read, and unfortunately I can't bring it up because the app is more than likely going down because of maintenance.
The way that I read it was Benedict will give you a quest. You can choose whether you want to do it in Crucible, Gambit, or Strikes. And your weapon will be different. It'll be the same weapon. It'll just have like a slightly different appearance on it. And it's designed to be stretched across the entire season.
Yeah, so you can choose how you want to go about getting the weapon. It'll be the exact same weapon, but you can go about how you want to obtain it. So instead of being forced to play Crucible because it's a Crucible weapon, ritual weapon that you really want to get, but again, it's in Crucible, it's going to not be fun for you to do. So if you really enjoy playing Gambit and are good at playing Gambit, then you're going to choose the Gambit route. Or if you really enjoy, grinding it out in strikes and doing all that stuff, then you can go the strike route. Or if you want to slug it out in PvP, you can go the PvP route, and there will be objectives based on the route that you choose. And the cool thing, like ZK was mentioning, is there are 3 different variations they'll end up becoming skins, of course. So say you choose to strike one, you get all that done, and you obtain the weapon. You'll have the strike variation, um, same weapon and everything as the other two, but you'll have a strike skin. Now, if you want to get the Gambit skin or the PvP skin, then you can choose those other two to do as well and do the objectives for that to obtain the ornament to change the look of it to those if you want. So it's a really cool concept. I'm kind of excited to see because as cool as these ritual weapons were and all this other stuff, um, some of them were a little bit too grindy
Yeah.
to try and get, and especially again going back to the whole if there's a particular game mode you're not good at or you just don't have the time for or just don't simply enjoy, it, most people it's PvP, but this allows for more people to have the chance to obtain the same weapon, but by going the route they want to go. Instead of something that would take a good person in PvP an hour to do versus someone who's not necessarily as good at PvP, 5 days, we'll say, just to really stretch it out.
Yeah. Definitely.
And even then that's like a huge stretch, but like you all seen what I'm getting at with that, is the amount of time it takes for one person to do the stuff to get that weapon versus another person. And this allows for everyone to have the same opportunity to acquire it, but going about it their own way. And if they want to do more to obtain the other stuff, then they can do that. And it'll be the same role as the PvP or the Gambit, or if they go with the Strike one, they'll all be the same role. Um,
Um, Trying to think what I was about to say. Let's see. Do you think? I'm kind of like wondering, depending on which route you go. Let's say you go Vanguard, if it'll be longer, or if it'll be shorter than say like if you go with Crucible. You know what I mean? Like maybe Vanguard would take a week versus Crucible would take a couple hours, maybe a day or two.
I want to honestly believe that they're gonna make it to where it's about the same time, because obviously if one route's shorter, then there's gonna be videos immediately about which one's shorter and which one you should do to immediately get the weapon. And that's just going to defeat the purpose of playing the way you want to.
That makes sense.
So
I get options and stuff like that, but I kind of wish they would go back to the old way, man. Like you get three. If you don't want to get, make them short and sweet, but give you three.
yeah.
I can't remember what season it was, but there was the one with the bow, the Gambit bow. Those are really really short, and they were like overall. I mean, they weren't like fantastic, but they weren't bad weapons, and I didn't think the grind for any of it was that bad. You know what I mean?
Um, I think it was when
I'm pretty sure it was whenever it was a bow for Gambit, right?
I think the shortest one honestly was when it was Buzzard, Escape,
Yes.
and Komodo.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Because all you had to do for Komodo was reach heroic. You didn't have to reach Fable like you
Yeah.
previously
That's
had to do, and then the amount of kills. I mean, if you had the luxury of using Arbalest, then the amount of kills you could get immediately per game, you could easily be looking around 10 to 15 kills, if not more, on average. But 10 to 15 is about, a rough good average for most players. Better players
Yeah,
would you be looking 15 to 25 per game. So it
that
would
can run
take
quick.
yeah, so it would take you like maybe 5 or 6 games to knock that out. And then your headshots, you only needed like 15, so you could do that in one
Yeah,
game. Uh,
and you got. I can't remember. That was probably one of the ones. Didn't you get bonus progress during Iron Banner? I know a lot of them do that.
they're supposed to, but I mean, it was so short there really wasn't any need to give bonus progress on it.
Yeah, that's
I think it
short.
was Randy's that was supposed to give bonus progress, but I never really saw it when I was trying to do scout rifle stuff.
I think Iron Banner is the exact place to have scout rifles, which if anybody from Bungie listens to this, probably buff scout rifles a little bit. Like oh, one, like the slow rate of fires a lot, maybe. I don't know. Um, How do you think the pinnacle weapon is gonna function? Do you think it's gonna be like Point of the Stag and all those other ones where you just have 4 options versus having, a brand new perk that's exclusive to that only weapon?
I think they were going to give the weapon like a unique perk, kind of, but not something that was as game breaking as like Recluse and like Mountaintop.
Yeah.
Um, which actually that real quick that actually brings me to something else too that I saw. I don't know how accurate it is or if it's actually current, but there was rumors um, for something that I saw about Mountaintop that they're actually working on finally nerfing Mountaintop before
Yeah.
season 12.
Yep. Um,
Because all of a sudden too many people are crying the Mountaintop is so good, so accurate. I personally have never really noticed that it being that accurate. Like it does take a bit of skill to actually to aim it,
that takes a lot of skill.
but a lot of
You've seen me try to use it.
yeah, him and I running Prophecy Dungeon, he was
Couldn't
so
hit.
inaccurate.
Yeah, couldn't hit a thing.
And that was with a standstill target.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I don't really use it that much. So whenever we're like jumping up and trying to like shoot from the hip and stuff like that, like I'm just not good with it. Versus depending on that splash damage in PvP and then just switching and then bam hitting them. You know what I mean? It's two completely different things. I don't feel like it's overpowered in the hands of everyone, but I feel like with certain people, like the other day when I was playing, there was a guy that's just this titan floating around the map and just bam one shot everybody with mountaintop. Like, he was really, really, really good with it, and that was then it would seem overpowered, but just in the hands of anybody, no, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, that was along the lines of like with Luna's Howl before it was changed. Everybody could
Yeah,
have Luna's Howl, but not everyone's going to be able to constantly hit headshots, even though at the time it was a 180, so headshots are pretty easy to still hit. But even when it got changed to 150, it was still pretty easy to hit headshots. But Mountaintop is just very situational playing because if you're running the spike nade um, for it, then you've got to pretty much be hitting them direct on. And most people they would wait until they were like super close. They weren't really trying to use it from far away, so I could understand that part. But the other big reason that they were going to be making the changes finally is because of how much it's used for boss damage. That was the biggest thing because a lot of solos for dungeons, from Pit of Heresy to Prophecy, revolved around having Mountaintop.
yeah,
And that because that was your other primary source of damage because with Taken Spec and running the direct impact, you could I believe you could one shot orange bars outside of Knights, of course, because Knights was like two and a half really to kill, so you could just finish it off with another weapon. But you know, if you combine it with oppressive, then you pretty much kill it instantly.
Oh,
So
for sure.
that's one thing they're looking into changing is the fact that grenade launcher is so good that you could use that over using a heavy grenade launcher. Unless, of
Definitely.
course, you had anarchy.
I
So,
would I would like to see it, I guess, nerfed so people just stop complaining about it and maybe see it less frequently in the Crucible. But I just overall I don't think it's a problem, man. It's effective in PvE, and I think in the right hands it's really effective in PvP. But I've never seen it as oh my god, it's so overpowered, I've got to have it kind of thing like Anarchy. That's almost a necessity in some things, especially if you're solo. Swords are almost a necessity. Those things are, to me, are overpowered because they just trump everything else. I've never thought going into Crucible or going into PvP, oh, I've got to have my mountaintop. Got to have my mountaintop.
yeah, like for myself, I don't use mountaintop on every map. My loadouts
No.
typically are dependent on the map. Um, Outside of using shotguns, I don't really believe in myself using shotguns because I don't like the state of shotguns being the way that they are right now. So unless I've got specific quests to use shotguns or bounties or whatever, I refuse to use a shotgun in general to play
Yeah,
Crucible. So, and even if for close quarters, I will use an SMG or a fusion rifle for the most part for my gameplay because I I believe in doing that for my gunfights versus just sitting in the corner with a shotgun the whole time. So,
yeah, for sure.
a lot of times, I if I don't feel like changing things over, I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna run bygones, even though it's a close quarter maps. Then I'm gonna get punished, but I can also still try and make it work at the same time. Um,
For sure.
but um, I don't really have anything else to add because, again, since that's down, and I'm sure maintenance is going to be kicking in here shortly, which I'm actually
Yeah.
surprised we haven't been kicked yet. Um, I don't really have much more to add right now. Was there anything else
Yeah.
you had, or
Uh, no, man, that is it for me.
yeah, I think that's a pretty good stopping point. We in general we covered a lot of things, especially the TWAB was released on Thursday, but we're just now kind of being able to get around to covering everything today because we've had a bunch of stuff going on in both of our lives. So it's been a little rough getting it.
A little crazy.
Yeah. So we
I've just been playing the past two and a half. What we've been playing for 2 hours now? With a fractured shoulder, so it's medicine time for me.
yeah. So um, we'll try and bring you guys another podcast soon.
Hopefully
Obviously, we
next
will.
week.
Yeah. Hopefully this coming week. Um, and we'll definitely, obviously have stuff from the club. We'll have stuff from Reddit. Whatever other sources we can find or we end up coming across. And I'll go through the forums on the Destiny app and see what I can find because I know there was a couple things, but again, I can't get into that right now. So that'll be something for next time for sure.
Yeah, I've definitely got a thing that I set up on Reddit that I thought was like pretty interesting, and we can cover that next time too. About weird, way out there exotic combinations. If you could do this, what would you do? What would you call it? Kind of thing. So that'd be. I've seen a lot of like really crazy stuff, so that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah. So on that note, the last thing really is I think kind of a cool idea that we could probably try and do every week. We'll see how that goes. Um, we want to leave you guys with like a discussion topic before the next podcast, um, and video as well because we'll edit it down to where it starts from where we begin. But we want to try and leave a discussion topic for everyone. That way we get people involved when we don't have people joining us on the podcast. But I think a very good discussion is what are you guys' thoughts on all the stasis classes, and how do you feel they'll be, whether it's in Crucible or in the PvE aspect? How do you guys think that they'll handle? And just like, what are your thoughts on it, and just how everything's going to work with the stasis classes? So,
Definitely.
definitely give us your thoughts, and um, if you guys have anything for us as well, feel free to comment, or um, on the stream as well. Feel free to chime in, ask us questions, or just anything of that nature.
Yeah. Next podcast, my stream should be up too. I've got AT&T internet right now, so it's not the best. So I wasn't able to stream this time. I think last time it was a pretty crappy stream too. It cut out halfway through and then cut back on, so I wasn't able to really save anything. But I've got the internet guy coming tomorrow to upgrade, so you should be able to do a dual stream. Hopefully, I think it's what me and IBA are going to try to set up, is trying to get like a dual stream thing going on. So hopefully soon, within the next like 2 to 3 podcasts, we'll probably figure it out.
By then, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, once again, our podcast is being called the Redjacks podcast.
Official name now.
Yeah, official name. Um, we'll we'll have the channel on YouTube up at some point, to where the videos will also start going on there, along as to both of our channels as well, to kind of just keep a wider spread, and to get people involved, and get it out there for folks to see and check out. But it's been a lot of fun. Definitely be sure to check out ZK when he does stream, and that's gonna do it for us. I'm
Yep,
IBA.
that's it. And I'm ZkSaint, and you guys have a good day, man.